Welcome, everyone, and happy Thursday. It is noon Eastern time, back in the booming metropolis of Ambler, Pennsylvania, just outside the city of Philadelphia, PA. Thursdays, noon Eastern time, Ambler, you know what that means. It is time for Talent Experience Live, your weekly look into all things human resources, talent management, HR tech, artificial intelligence, and so much more. Talent Experience Live is proudly brought to you by the good folks here at Phenom, whose purpose is, stop me if you've heard this before, to help 1 billion find the right work. That is why we host this program on a weekly basis, why we have a plethora of other great content, including but not limited to Cliff Yurkowicz's podcast, Unusual Attitudes. Just had a brand new episode this past Monday with Brenna Garbelman, so definitely check that out. Why we have fantastic webinars on a weekly, if not monthly basis. Why we wrapped up I Am Phenom, the global edition back in Philadelphia prior this spring. Why we're ramping up for I Am Phenom Europe this fall. And why we're at every single HR Tech event under the sun. It's all to help 1 billion people find the right work. Now, you may be thinking podcasts, webinars, HR tech events. How does that truly help people find the right work? Well, the answer is very simpler. It doesn't. We do that through our applied artificial intelligence platform, which helps candidates find the right fit faster, employees evolve in their current roles and beyond, recruiters achieve next level productivity and efficiency, and managers get to build better teams through data automation and analytics. So if any of that interests you at all, run, don't walk to phenom.com to learn more. I'm sure we'll have a banner for an upcoming webinar and so much more. But please check out the website. That's why we do this. Now that the bills are paid, we are going to get into a very exciting topic, which actually has a webinar coming up in July. We can't wait to invite you and see you there. It is all around pharma. Pharmaceuticals, that is, for those of you who are not familiar with that lingo. It is about the challenges that they are facing. There are labor shortages, there are acquisitions happening, investments all across the board, and talent acquisition teams, specifically within the pharmaceutical scope within that lens, are really struggling. So we have created a webinar, and today we're going to chat about really some of the news that is happening around this, because you can't open up certain publications without learning more. So without any further hesitation, I'm going to bring my very special guest on, recurring guest, Mike DeMarco. We have to get him a bedazzled jacket soon for his 1000th episode or whatever this is. But without any further hesitation, senior product marketing manager?
I'm on the product marketing team.
He's a product marketer at heart. Mike DeMarco. Mike, welcome to the program, dude.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
It's been a minute.
It has. It has. And I know we're going to wrap this up quick today because the World Cup starts.
You have places to be.
People to see, man. That's where it is.
I'm just scared of the commute home.
Yeah.
I'm just scared of the commute home now.
Well, there's no game today.
Okay.
The weekend, this upcoming weekend, there's some games in Philadelphia. And then after that, it's like every other day.
I'm going to be landlocked in South Philly.
You are. Take the train, brother.
That's another story for another day.
It is.
So,
it is.
Yeah.
So we're talking about pharmaceuticals.
We're talking about pharma. All about pharma.
For the people. Let the people know at home what's happening.
Well, it's pretty wild. So to help prepare for today, I actually was scoping out some news just around what is happening in the biopharma industry. And I was on a site on biopharma.com.
Yeah. No free ads. No free promo.
But you see here in the headlines, it's really telling this story of massive mergers and acquisitions happening, IPO booms. Organizations are trying to figure out ways. Tons of money is flowing into startups nonstop. Clinical trials are popping off everywhere. GLPs are booming. Organizations are now stuck trying to figure out really 3 big buckets, right? It's around patent cliffs are changing. So that means that drugs are going to be moving into open market, and organizations are going to need to start to figure out what is going to be their value pitch moving forward. GLP-1s fit well into that space, right? And so organizations are doing a lot of research, development into providing these new medications and bringing them to the market.
Yeah.
This week, I met up with our domain leads, and actually here at Phenom too, it's even changing our team structure. We're putting more focus onto pharma. We're building teams around this industry because of how diverse the talent is. Yeah. You're not just hiring for manufacturers who could actually produce the drug. You're not just hiring for transportation to distribute the drug. You're hiring for clinical roles too, to actually do the research, doctors. Considering how wide the talent pool is, there's tons and tons of challenges here with bringing in the right people, keeping that pipeline going.
Yeah.
On the mergers and acquisitions side of things, you just bought a $1 billion company. You're bringing in multiple locations. It could be even global. Now you have to find a way to take all this new internal talent and map it back out to your organization. And then to be able to make really clear business decisions for hiring, for retaining talent, because I can't beat this drum hard enough. Your people are your lifeblood. The people are the ones that are keeping your lights on and keeping your organization running. And if you're not thinking about how your people strategy connects to your business strategy, you're really putting yourself at a deficit.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting look at things because, the constant talk around human resources and really jobs as a whole is that AI is changing the workforce. And what you just described is obviously an impact of AI, of things moving quickly. But then you circled back and you beat that drum of you still need people. You need doctors to review the clinical trials. You need scientists to actually put the chemicals together in order to make the weight loss drug that everyone in Hollywood wants, right? You need all of these people involved. And it makes sense that we're focused on it. You mentioned the patent cliffs. You mentioned all of these other things. What is the pharmaceutical in biosphere really market most unprepared for as it stands today in June of 2026?
Yeah, I think that there's a lack of preparedness to be able to handle all the things that I just mentioned to you. They all flow into each other. And without having an intelligent system of orchestration, like the one that we're building here at Phenom with our WorkOps platform. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but essentially what we're doing is we're organizing unstructured data. Yeah. We're applying reasoning on top of it to get it into deep insights. Then we put on top of that ontologies, which are now putting all of that together and making it work for you. Yeah. And then you're able to add in your information, like your business plans, your projects, your goals, your investor decks, everything in there, to then fine tune it to get a full view of your organization from the top level down. Because we talk about this thing here around Phenom a lot, which is this concept of the hypercell. Yeah. And in every organization, it's essentially the molecular structure of an organization, right? It's looking at role, function, geography, and workflow. And it's pulling it all together for you because you need to apply the right set of automation and intelligence to be able to fulfill those needs. So say if you just brought on a ton of new folks through a merger and acquisition, you're going to need to quickly get a skills analysis of all those folks. You're going to need to understand the departments that they work in. Yep. You're going to need to understand where you have gaps in your organization and then how to route them properly to the different departments in your organization. And then you want to keep all these people because it's very, very hard to find research scientists, to find doctors who are specialized in key areas of research to be able to then create those drugs. So you're not going to want to burn those people and not find a good place for them in your organization without having tools like Phenom, like a WorkOps platform that gives you that holistic view for you then to start applying AI and automation and agents to those workflows. Then our orchestration engine layers on top of the ontologies, because that's really where you're able to dynamically update and manage those hypercells as they change. Because you're not going to hire the same way in the US as you are going to, say, in Germany.
Yeah. No, you certainly not. I mean, I think there's things that are vastly different, and there's employee protections in Europe that simply don't exist here in the United States. You mentioned the WorkOps, the kind of nucleus of an organization. Let's do a specific example real quick. Yeah. Let's say there is a legacy drug that is now available in a generic version, right? I think it's safe to say that all pharmaceutical companies, for the most part, are capitalistic, right? If there is a generic version, they are probably not going to focus nearly as much of the time and effort that they once did on it. So what does it look like to kind of redeploy the employees on that when you're looking for the latest and greatest new medication, new drugs, something like that? Where should organizations start in order to start to redeploy those employees that you just mentioned that are hyper specific and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think it begins with looking at it through. So a tool that we have here is our ontology studio. So I shared earlier just how that really brings in all of those insights for you to be able to see your organization. You could see the skills gaps. You could see the initiatives that they're tied to. So you need to get a macro view of each of these folks. And then you need to find ways of taking those skills and through, AI career coaches, through skills validation coaches, through assessments that can get a feel for where the person is as far as their technical skills, their motivations, their interests, their situational judgment, right? And then you could start to see if somebody was in a specific department, how to then move them and then to transition them off of that generic drug and then bring them into more experimental research roles.
Yeah. And I want to ask, how does an intake agent correspond or interact with all of this? Because you just mentioned some very specific things, right? I can't even articulate them back to you based upon that, right? We are dealing with very specific drugs, very specific licenses, very specific education pieces. How can an intake agent help either those managers or that internal recruitment team to redeploy people? Yeah. I always think back to when I was a recruiter and I was hiring for engineering roles, right? And I didn't know the difference between JavaScript and Python and all sorts of these things. Yeah. And realistically, I didn't need to at that time. But when you're redeploying your own employees, you want to know exactly where their specialties are, what their advantages are, what their disadvantages are. How does that come into play in order to be successful?
So like before the requisition even opens, right? You are then initiating the intake agent. Really the purpose of the intake agent is for two things. It's really to cut down the time it takes you to coordinate between hiring managers and recruiters to get that first initial intake done. Yep. But really the important part of it is that it's able to then understand the hiring manager's new requirements. So as skills change, as roles continue to develop, as new AI skills continue to emerge, you now need to add that to your requisition. Yeah. And then that informs the talent pool. And informs who you're sourcing. So really you could look at the intake agent, and we have a stack of agents here, and a few of them fall within a group that like we call hiring agents. Yeah. And it really starts with the intake agent, where you get that quick coordination between the recruiter and the hiring manager, where you could let an AI agent, the intake agent, go ahead and initiate the conversation. So once the recruiter raises the job, the hiring manager gets an email, hey, new requisition opened, and then it asks the specific set of questions that are necessary for the role. But being that you are within Phenom's ecosystem and it's all tied back into our WorkOps platform, that the ontology is pushing in there and letting you know, hey, the last time you hired for this role, you needed this specific skill. And now these new 3 skills are up. Yep. So make sure that we cover that. Yeah. And then these are the shifts that we need the people to work to. Is that still true? So it helps you to update the requisition without a 30-minute meeting because the ontology, the intelligence layer, understands your organization, the role, what it was, and how it's shifting and changing. So you're even seeing the hiring manager time. But then once that new requisition gets updated, then sourcing agent kicks right off because now it understands how these new skills are now mapped to that role. Specifically, because then that impacts the type of talent now that you're sourcing and bringing in from your internal talent pool and how strongly their current skills align with the role, where those skills gaps are, and then how you could go ahead and fill those gaps.
Let's scare people. What happens if those two aren't working hand in hand? If you don't have the intake agent working directly with the hiring managers, with the recruitment teams, what are some of the cause and effects of that should be alarms going off in some pharmaceutical HR representatives' heads right now?
Well, in an M&A, right? Like you could be a research scientist in the one organization, and then when you're coming over, say, to a new one, what it means to be a research scientist at, say, Johnson & Johnson is going to be very different for what it means at Moderna, for instance. And so when you're making these massive purchases and these organizations, billions of dollars are being affected. I even think that I saw today, let me just say, J&J acquires Firefly, maker of degrader antibody drugs, for $1 billion. That literally just happened today. So Johnson & Johnson, if you're out there, you're probably going through this right now.
Yep.
And so now you have to figure out between Firefly and J&J, how does this role now map within this new reality? How do we need to update the role? What skills are now required? What do we need to get out of the person in this role? And how are we going to get the most out of this new group of folks that we are welcoming into our organization from Firefly? If you don't have an intake agent to update that, then you're dealing with stale requisitions. If you're dealing with stale requisitions, what does that mean for your organization? That means that you're not applying the best way to find the candidate that you're going to ultimately need there, because you're going to be hiring for skills that are degraded, that are not necessarily what you're looking for today. And so already you're not able to keep your roles, your requisitions, which is really the first step to getting the right candidate in the door. Now, those requirements, and again, this is why it's just so important to have a centralized ecosystem. Like, I know Phenom's paying the bills, but like, seriously, dude, like, if you don't have a unified system to pull all of your data and your insights in, then your intake agent, you're not able to update those requisitions.
Yep.
That's manual processes. I am Phenom. You brought it up earlier. I was talking to folks. I was at the agent center.
Yep.
And I was spending a little bit of time at the intake booth.
It was a lot of time. It was a lot of time he spent at the intake.
It was some time. It was a few minutes.
Yes.
But I would ask that one question to people. When was the last time you updated your requisition? How often do you do that?
Yeah.
And either people would just blank me, or they'd say, like, we try to do it like annually.
Yeah.
So that first step of keeping the roles aligned to your organization is so foundational and so important. And then how does that impact sourcing? Well, then your sourcing agent is not looking for the best fit candidate for that specific moment. It's not dialed into the role, to how it's changed, to how it's shifting.
Yeah. People update their requisition probably about as frequently as they update their resume. It's
Probably.
only when they need to, on a need-to basis. When you need to really update those sorts of things as frequently as you can with how fast the world is changing. One of the other things that you mentioned was specifically plant and manufacturing staffing. What does a recruiter actually need when it comes to a plant opening, when they're pushing for a hard deadline, when they're actually trying to get bodies in suits on the floor, getting work done? What do they need?
You need a lot of frontline support. You need to have plant supervisors making sure that everybody's hands are leaving with 5 fingers, 5 toes at the end of the day. But you also need plant operators too, to package up the drugs to work. And if you're going to meet that deadline, you need to make sure that you have coverage. So even if one employee calls out, that could put your target at risk. Now, say you have your best line worker dips and leaves.
Peace.
And now what are you going to do? How are you going to fill them in? And so really where we are able to help is through tools like intelligent sourcing, to where you're able to dial in your CRM and to really have it continually look for these frontline roles.
Yep, that makes sense. I imagine a lot of these manufacturing facilities, they're running 24/7, right? Like you mentioned GLP-1s at the top of the program. It seems like there is a need for those. People want them very rapidly. I want to ask you, how does voice screening agent fit into some of these shift-based or even field-based roles where you mentioned your top line, supervisor, manager, or whatever, says, I found a better opportunity. More power to you, you go. How does the voice screening agent help with filling in those gaps immediately?
I mean, the voice screening agent, you're able to, there's a couple of different ways that you're able to see it, because actually the voice screening agent's such a cool tool, and we've been able to see it really evolve past candidate screening. So one, it's able to screen candidates for you 24/7.
Yeah.
So as you open up that new requisition and you get that flood of talent, say you have 100 new applicants, right, for that plant role, how are you going to sort them all out and get them all screened and scheduled and get somebody in your door by the next day?
Yeah.
Right? That tomorrow's really what a lot of people are focused on. You can't do that with 5 recruiters and managing 100 other requisitions. This is allowing you to proactively go ahead and screen and even assess those candidates too, because we're working assessments into voice screening agent.
Yeah.
So, and then you're also, the way that this trickles down into like the day to day of your life is with like our frontline shift scheduling capabilities. So So say somebody needs to call out sick automatically. The ontology understands your org structure. It understands who is in that department. It understands the shift, the supervisor. It's able then to go ahead and understand that, hey, Devin just called out and Mike is actually scheduled to work the same shift, but on Friday. Yep. We could swap out right now, and it offers that. And it allows you to select the person who you would most recommend to cover the shift. It then pushes it out to the person, updates the schedules, and keeps it all in place. And, really with manufacturing, I wanted to go back to like your last question of like, what does a recruiter need to do in order to keep it staffed? And one of the key things is really looking at the skills and keeping folks engaged. So like AI career coaching to continue to upskill that population, because those folks are being poached by all other industries. Like in manufacturing, right? The floor operator can then go ahead and move to Amazon. Yeah. They can go ahead and move to Tesla. They could go ahead and move to a variety of different places still while providing that manufacturing skill set. Yeah. And I think like really what organizations need to start wrapping their heads around, which is like, what is a work ops platform that can allow me to see my organization, to be able to understand how the bottom line is getting affected, and then to get down to a granular level to the actual people who are fulfilling that and who are allowing you to meet your goals.
Yeah. With the abundance of technology in every single field, I think you're seeing a lot of those transferable skills be applicable across different regions, across different things. You mentioned, the maintenance, the operator position. You can do that anywhere for any organization now.
Yeah.
Now, the one question that's immediately going to come up with this is we're dealing a lot with AI. It's involving people's careers. It's involving shift. It's involving a lot of things that, quite frankly, require compliance.
Yep.
I've seen it everywhere on LinkedIn, on websites. People say compliance is built in. What does that truly mean? How is compliance built in? How can you ensure that you're staying compliant while you're doing some of these very tricky tasks?
Yeah, you need to be able to start to leverage things like policies, and also to be able to have a guardrail. And we're speaking really specifically now, just like around like launching agents and thinking about an autonomous digital workforce. Yep. So if you're trying to start to string together multiple agents, like how we just said around the intake agent to the sourcing agent to the voice screening agent, as you're stringing them together, you need to have specific policies in place so that, like, say like, hey, plant operator quits and a requisition is raised on a Tuesday, right? Intake has to be done within 24 hours because we need to move fast. You get to set those rules within the orchestration engine as policies, common language, and then those govern that work, that operation, right? Yep. Same thing. And then the compliance agent is overlooking it and making sure that the updates and the changes that you're making, so like back to the intake, it's making sure that when you're updating a requisition, that you are updating it in a way that is compliant, that is secure, that is not just somebody typing in a new requirement,
Okay. All right. That makes sense. I want to tackle one more topic before we head out on this today. And it's something that I think is impacting this industry more so than others. And it's fraudulent candidates, right? What does that look like in this field? Why is it scary? Number one, when we're dealing with, quite frankly, drugs and consumer things and lots of oversight. How can organizations prepare themselves for this? And what are they really dealing with right now on a day-to-day basis when we look at the pharmaceutical industry?
I mean, synthetic talent is definitely flooding the market. There's candidates that are fabricating resumes. There's candidates who you might see on the initial screening. It's a completely different person in the interview. And what you need to start thinking about is really having a tool in place that can really help you monitor that candidate's interaction from your first touch all the way through to hire. And so like here at Phenom, right, our fraud detection agent acts as like an overlay on top of our voice screening agent. So it's picking up on where's the person calling from. It's picking up on their tone of voice, and it's understanding their answers to the questions. Now, when you move them forward to an interview, and it's a recorded live video interview, the fraud detection agent now is overlaying on top of that to see, is that the same person? Has their voice changed during the interview? Is the person who is supposed to be the world's top researcher for the next oncology drug to break through for cancer research, are they reading their answers from ChatGPT or do they actually have their stuff?
Yeah.
You know, our onboarding agent then goes ahead and makes sure and verifies credentials, background checks, I-9s. So you really need to start thinking about this as a system that's able to be interconnected, but that is also able to secure compliance throughout the way.
Yeah. And I think arm talent acquisition teams with the right questions to ask. I mentioned my downfall as a recruiter previously where I didn't know the difference between Python and Java. I wasn't applying for an engineering role, but if I was, that's a great question to ask, right? And arming them with what an answer should be. And if someone is asking it or regurgitating it from a GPT or from some sort of generative AI program, it's important to get those things out of the way. Again, the fraud detection agent is not kicking anyone out. It's not making decisions for the humans. It's simply alerting them and says, hey, you might want to take a little bit of a closer look here.
Well, yeah, and like especially like in an area where you really need certifications, and if you want to, you know, follow good manufacturing's best practices, like in being GMP compliant, like you need to make sure that that is that person with those credentials, and the way that you're able to do that is through fraud detection.
Fake it till you make it's not going to work in this industry. Unfortunately,
No, not at all.
Go try someplace else. Mike, this has been a fun conversation all around pharmaceuticals. I want to ask you, where can folks learn more about the webinar? Where can they register? And then the other question that I have for you is there anything that we left on the table that you want to send the folks home with before we log off today?
Run. Don't walk over to phenom.com. Check out our events, our webinars. They're updated constantly. Yep. But we're holding this webinar on July 15th. At 10 a.m. Eastern. You're going to be able to come in and just see, and we're going to cover these topics in more detail, and then also show you how you can start thinking differently through an orchestration engine and through a WorkOps platform like Phenom to really allow you to start solving some of these hypercell problems.
Yeah. Beautiful thing about 10 a.m. on July 15th, no World Cup games like there is this afternoon. So everyone, please go enjoy the Mexico game this afternoon. Mike, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it as always.
Thank you much.
Good chopping it up with you about pharmaceuticals. No pun intended there. That just so happened. I hope everyone has a safe, happy, and healthy weekend. We can't wait to see you next week for Talent Experience Live because we do this every damn Thursday. And we'll see you then. Thanks so much. Bye.